Everybody, this is John with Cashflow Veteran. I just wanted to reach back out. We're relaunching a lot of stuff. It's been a rough couple of years just with COVID and everything else. But if I'm being honest, I do certainly have to take the amount of responsibility that I certainly am responsible for, and not keeping up with what I was supposed to be doing, but also making sure that I'm working, doing the jobs that I'm supposed to be doing, as I tried and fell flat on my face in entrepreneurship with some of the other projects I had going on, to the point where my wife finally just said, hey, you need to go get a job. And so that's what I did, because that's what my family needed at the time. Now, I should have still been able to do this on the side, but I will say there was a little bit of the death of a lot of those ideas, a lot of that motivation to do a lot of that stuff. And I felt like there was a period that I kind of had to mourn some of it. And unfortunately, I think it probably took a lot longer for me to do than it probably should have. And that's okay. I think that it's to a point where I'm not giving myself the excuse that's there, but at the same time, I certainly think that we have to evaluate when we're letting ourselves slip. I know that I can be a procrastinator a lot of the time, that a lot of things have to just line up just right for me to be able to do stuff. I have to, it's if my kids are doing something and I'm supposed to be responsible for something they're doing, whether we're getting to a dance practice on time, swim practice on time, and I know that Jackie's working doing her thing. It's easy to put off a lot of other things, and after the kids go to bed, wow, I'm so tired. Honestly, that's when a lot of that entrepreneurship needs to wake up. And certainly I should have started a little bit earlier. But I think with the most recent thing that did happen with the phrase "Let's go Brandon," as viral as that has gone. I mean, not even just you know chanting at football games and what have you. I mean, I think that's number one. I think it's fantastic that there is something that people are finally waking up to. Just the overall government tyranny with shoving down all this stuff on people. I think it's absolutely disgusting what has happened. But I also think people have allowed a lot of that stuff to happen, and of course they're caging it in a language of safety. Everything the government has ever done that has trampled on our rights as citizens of the United States, and honestly just citizens of the world, as much as I may not want to say that phrase specifically, they have no problem, it seems, walking all over people, their rights, in order to enact whatever policy that they want to. And they always say that it's for your own good. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Those famous phrase from Ronald Reagan. Not that I'm the biggest fan of Ronald Reagan either. I think certainly that's a pointed way to do it. I mean, even Eisenhower came out and said that we have to worry about the military-industrial complex, and he did it after his term, even after he benefited from the genesis of that during his presidency. And following all of that, we've just seen it get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And again, everything has become, because we're doing this policy because it's the best thing for you. We believe it's going to provide you more safety, provide you more security. In reality, it's had us trading a lot of that safety and security at the expense of the freedom and liberties that we might have had. It also takes away the responsibility of us to be citizens, to be people of our community. I mean, there's a reason why, as the modern welfare state has come up, that pretty much you don't see the number or the impact that a lot of these old school foundations used to have in these communities, that were more tied to the values of those particular communities rather than just trying to be an American. It was more about not even just where you're at in your state, but just where you're at in your community. The mutual aid societies or any other type of organization. And of course now people are doing it because it's part of the tax code, and you organize it in such a way that allows you for benefits. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But we're having to do it based on taxes rather than being able to base it on what benefit that we can give to the actual people that are there. Because as the tax code becomes more and more complex, there's always carving out new niches for people to have loopholes into. And I mean, granted, on the one side of me, for an entrepreneur, we have to remember that the tax code is the path. If you want to be wealthy, if you want to be able to have influence and power, in those things. It's providing you with the playbook on what it is that you need to do, how you need to structure things in order to be the most profitable, to win at this game that it is. On the other hand, I think it's way too complex. It doesn't need to be that complex. We would have a lot more businesses, certainly a lot more small businesses at this point, with a much less egregious tax code that's there. I mean, I was listening to a podcast recently. I don't remember which one, unfortunately, but the original carve-outs for these business owners that were really good friends with politicians. I mean, it was just crazy to me that the politician at the time, as they're getting the tax code, we're talking the early 1900s, sometime between 1913, 1917, I believe, is when the tax code came into be. So shortly after that, as soon as the tax code is put out there, you have, a number of people immediately going to their politicians and asking for these exclusions. And they even have people that were written in as an exclusion almost by name or by company to be able to do that. And it's unfortunately the way that our system certainly has allowed. It certainly hasn't prevented corruption at that level. I mean, it certainly is just an American style of fascism at this point, where the government gets to control, even though it may not own the means of production. It certainly gets to control the means of production through the way that it works with banks, through the way that it works with labor, through the way that it works with these business owner and their taxes specifically. And that it really does only benefit the most wealthy in this country. So on the one hand, I think it's an absolute atrocity of a system. On the other hand, it is the guidebook that we're given. And, there's times that we have to try to decide between, doing what's right for ourselves and our business, what's right for our community, and how that business helps as many people as possible and solve those needs, even though it might be an international business that you're selling things with. But it also, at the same time, you have to judge it by, okay, when do I need to go against the grain from the system that we currently have versus when do I need to use it as the playbook to get me where I need to go? Because the unfortunate part is, as the more that we participate in the system, the more that it continues to perpetuate itself. So if we have an issue with the system, at some point, we have to resist the system in a way that isn't participating in it. And that's where a lot of the counter economics, I think, comes from. It's why I'm a big fan of replaceyourmortgage.com with Michael Lush and his team putting together a way that basically you can remove money out of your checking account and use your home equity in such a way that it really does become an asset that you're able to transact in and out of, and use your home almost as a checking account. Still takes a ton of discipline to do, and I highly recommend you going to replaceyourmortgage.com and checking that out if that's something that would be of interest to you, and watch the 30 minutes worth of videos that are out there, because I think they're going to give you the best kind of perspective on where it's at the time for a lot of it. I personally think that that's a great option for people. And I think what people don't really understand sometimes is that you don't own the money that's in your checking account. The fact that to a bank, you've actually given those dollars, you've given them ownership of the money that is in your bank account. And when you go look at your bank account, it says you have $8,000 or whatever the case may be in your savings account, in your checking account, when in reality, that is just saying, hey, we owe you this money. It's not what you have, it's what you owe, what they owe to you in terms of IOU. And the problem is they don't actually have that amount of money in their bank to be able to actually give you. It's how what's called the fractional reserve banking system has set up, where when they take in $1,000 from you, they can lend $10,000 back out to you, and that's how they print money or create money out of thin air. And for them, it makes them seem like their company is worth basically $9,000. They owe you $1,000, and they have loans that are now an asset to them on paper. And so now they're $9,000 plus of value that's there, of wealth, of assets when you look at the balance sheet. And that's how a lot of money is actually created in the system that we have. And I think also because we perpetuate the system that we are part of, that's also why, while we have agency for not getting into debt, we also are incentivized to do so. So when it's easier to do certain things, when it's easier to try to keep up with the Joneses and have the nicest truck or the nicest boat or the nicest house, you know what? We're going to be willing to borrow money if it improves our status symbol, and try to leverage those things to a better way of life. And so those are parts of the things that are somewhat inherent in our DNA, but at the same time, I think we certainly have to find a way to resist and build back this idea that savings and investing, even though it may not look sexy, is the better path. It's the one that takes our ability to think a lot longer in the future to actually establish generational wealth, to be able to establish principles in our children to be able to do some of that too. So that's where, thinking of it from that perspective and kind of going against the grain is why I brought up replace your mortgage. Another one that I'd bring up is the infinite banking concept. And I can't tell you how many times I've talked to financial advisors or anybody else who is financially savvy, and one of the first things they'll do is say, absolutely not, you're not getting a good return. It's not a good investment vehicle. You should buy term, invest the difference. Dave Ramsey says that. Susie Orman says that. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other people that are out there that absolutely will take on whole life insurance policies and just take a gigantic crap on them and say, absolutely not. And the thing is are you still going to be, I think there's different ways to skin the cat, and how we get there. And the thing is some of these people are giving advice that is basic, I think, advice. They're not really getting into the nitty-gritty of it. They have preconceptions about it. But when we're looking at how you'd use some of these vehicles, it's not so much about whole life insurance policies being absolutely the best thing that you could do. It just means that for the infinite banking concept of becoming your own bank, that specifically, as conceived of by Nelson Nash and the Infinite Banking Institute, you can find them at infinitebanking.org, and find a practitioner. I use a practitioner specifically. He's how I got the name for this podcast, for Cashflow Veteran Podcast. He's the Cashflow Ninja. And MC Lobsher has absolutely kind of opened my eyes to a lot of it. And a lot of them, when they go become IBC practitioners, they basically have to get a master's degree when they go get certified in Austrian economics, so the Austrian business cycle theory of economics. And when you think about that, that is actually a counter. It explains more about what's going on, about why. It's not predictive necessarily about when something is going to crash. It just has a better diagnosis of the problem, why it will continue to be a problem, and it offers the best way to do autopsies, a financial autopsy of why something failed to begin with anyway. And I think that's certainly of value. But when you take that level of understanding and then apply it to some financial instrument that's out there, one of the reasons why they chose for the infinite banking concept, why they chose whole life insurance policies, a high dividend paying a high cash value dividend paying whole life insurance policy. We're talking of one that is set up in such a way that allows us to be able to use it as a bank for wealth capture and being able to not allow it to grow at a very good percent over time, that is tax advantage. That's also great. But what it allows you to do is be able to borrow from that without the volatility of the market, and being able to use that to secede from the system. And for Cashflow Veteran, that's what I'm all about. How do we as veterans secede from the system of the military financial complex, is what I like to call it. So, because I don't necessarily believe that TSP is the best thing that's out there. It follows the market, so I think it's certainly better than any mutual fund that you're going to get out there, or going to a financial advisor who's selling you a mutual fund. I think following the market in that regard is probably the best. And I had a podcast with one of my friends. I don't remember what episode specifically, but he goes into it. Nick is his name, and he has one that's based on a more of a financial advising that is based on kind of that concept as a veteran, and looking at TSP and actually going through the motions on how is best to structure that TSP account, because it's really simple. There's not a ton of options, but it follows the market essentially. I still don't like the market in general. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, plan. I'm not giving financial advice on any of this, but I'm saying when we're seceding from the system, we have to look at why we wouldn't participate in something like that, why we wouldn't follow the rule book of the taxes if there's a certain effect that we're trying to get. So this is a place of where we're trying to go specifically and why we'd use a certain vehicle over another, even if that vehicle isn't something that kind of plays by the rules or may not give us the returns, because everyone just says, well, if you just make more money, it's going to give you a lot more freedom. And I think that we know that just because you have more money doesn't make you necessarily more free, although it certainly makes you much freer when you are if you grew up in poverty, you don't have a whole lot of options. I certainly understand it from that perspective, but when we're talking about liberty, when we're talking about responsibility going along with that freedom, and if we participate in a system that, even though we win in terms of financial winnings and we earn a whole bunch of money, it does give us a lot more freedoms. But if we're still engaging in a system that reinforces us to keep up with the Joneses, we very well might just be buying off on a system that keeps us still kind of in old thinking. It's still better for us in the long run for our family to be financially well off, to be certain. However, if we're trying to build better communities as the whole financial system collapses and goes away from the dollar, there's going to be a lot of people who have their money in the financial sector that have played by the rules that are going to get absolutely left out to dry when the dollar collapses, because we keep printing it into oblivion. And yet all of the system that's built is, how do you make as much money in terms of dollars for the stock market? I mean, you're seeing stock market at all-time highs, and yet you're also seeing people in debt at all-time highs. So if you're participating in a system, it's still going to keep you with the habits and the incentives that help prop the system up. The question is how do you build something that gives you a lot more stability in the long run to be able to survive something like that? It's somewhat of a prepper's mindset financially, to be able to look at something like replace your mortgage or infinite banking concept and kind of putting all this stuff together to be able to do. And that's kind of what I'm really glad I did get inspired recently, re-inspired recently to kind of get back after this. And I have some meetings coming up with a few folks, and really looking forward to having some of the next guests I've already been lining up. But, one of the things I just took a stab at, and we'll see where it goes. I'm just, if Let's Go Brandon can top the charts on for music, for pop music, and then also for rap, if it can hit obviously number one on the rap charts, but also that same rap song hitting number one just on the music charts, I don't see a reason why a book like Doing Our Part, A Comprehensive Guide to Discovering How You Can Help the World Build Back Better, with just pages, 200 plus pages of just Let's Go Brandon. It's in 80 different languages. I mean, I'm working on some ground roots kind of marketing strategies on TikTok and a few others to really get after it. But I just wanted to get on here and just let you know that I'm relaunching a lot of the stuff with Cashflow Veteran. I'm actually launching a couple other podcasts too. I felt like I've put off some of the political stuff for a long time. When you come to Cashflow Veteran, it's about providing solutions, even though those might be counter to the way that the world works, the financial world works here. It's providing solutions without really trying to delve into the problem. Now, if we need to understand the problem a little bit more, I certainly will dive into that during the podcast as we provide that solution for it, or do it in a series, or whatever the case might be, to make sure that we illuminate what it is that we're doing, why we're doing it, why it's important to kind of get there. Because part of this, when you're running things that are counter to the way that things are going, there's an explanation process. So you have to have high quality marketing up front to get people in, to get people interested, and to be able to go, you know what, I'm going to commit to opening my mind and actually sitting and working through this in my own head to see if it's a right fit for me in one regard or another. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit today. I also wanted to let you know, if you haven't already seen on Facebook or something, that I've published a book. And by the way, this was so stinking easy to get published, whether you're using a Word doc, PDF. They have, I used Amazon's KDP on-demand print service to be able to do this. So the hardest part in my mind with that is, and there's plenty of other options. I have my own issues with Amazon, but as far as being able to come up with an idea that literally just Let's Go Brandon for 200 plus pages, and being able to turn that around in less than 24 hours and have it shipped to my house as soon as it got approved, is phenomenal. They give you the little ISBN number on back if you want to do that. They have guides that help you structure the front, the back. Honestly, the hardest part about writing this book was basically this back portion, to have something witty to say, but also coming up with kind of the best line that's here. up front. It's basically like if you're doing email marketing or something like that, you got the headline, subheadline to kind of draw people into the book. And my purpose with this one was to try to get after, using somewhat of the left's language on some of this stuff. Be able to hand somebody and they go, what is this crap? Build Back Better, really doing our part, takes a village, that type of stuff. And then when they open it up and they go, oh, let's go, Brandon. That's hilarious. That is funny. And I also wanted to make sure that I involved the entire world, because everybody around the world that is a world leader is trying to say Build Back Better, and basically wash their hands of everything that's going on and be a part of the movement as it goes through. So I wanted to make sure I added as many languages as this. I don't know if they're even correct. I just wanted to see what was the laziest way that I possibly could produce something that was out there, but also to get the experience of going through that publishing aspect of it. But now I can also say that I'm a published author as well. But honestly, the hardest part about doing this, if you're actually going to write a book, is writing the damn book. The next part of it is getting it edited. I mean, those two pieces are really the hardest, most time-consuming parts, and then getting it all formatted is another piece that's going to be a little bit easier, because they provide all of those guides and formats and tools for you to use to get the cut right, whatever the size might be. It's kind of slightly off-center to the right and left, depending on what the pages are, depending on what the cut is, whether this is a 5.5 by 8.5 inch book, and it could be whatever else too. So this really is kind of what is the driving factor. I mean, other than a lot of the other things, I mean, I don't even know if I'm going to have a job here in the next few months if my religious exemption letter doesn't go through. So this is one of those efforts to kind of get it out there. You know what, if I can ease that pain a little bit by getting this out there, certainly, if Let's Go Brandon can top the music charts, it should be able to top the book charts as well. So that's kind of why there's a couple different reasons why I wrote it, but we just getting after it, to be honest. Like, you know what, I've let my failed couple of years as an entrepreneur, as a wouldn't say necessarily a failed salesperson, but certainly trying to get my own stuff started, and learned a lot of lessons along the way, but really getting reinvigorated and getting started again and getting after it again. So I'm really excited to be doing something like that. So hope you enjoyed at least this portion of the podcast. There's going to be a lot of more stuff that is coming up. Some of the resources that I talked about today, I mean, if you're even thinking about doing a book or anything like that, I highly recommend going into the Amazon, the KDP. You could do an audio version of this book. You could do, or your book. You could do the Kindle version of it. I think you get a little bit more return on a Kindle version than trying to do a print version, just because of the extra costs that are involved in it. Even though you can offer it a little bit lower cost, your ability to make a little bit more. But this is more of a gag gift. It's more of something you really have to kind of have in your hand in order to do that. So I didn't even worry about doing that portion of it. I also mentioned, again, we're thinking counterculture, counter finances, counter military stuff. I mean, I don't even like the VA. I don't like any of that. So we're looking at options and solutions on how to avoid some of those systems that are out there, and that get us out of the system, and that help us take more responsibility and control for the things for the things in our life that get us there: health, wellness, fitness, mindset, medical care, you name it. I mean, for here at Cashflow Veteran, we're talking about everything, and how it, not only can, it might cost you a little bit more in some circumstances, but what can we put in place as an asset that pays for that type of lifestyle and that type of control as well? So it's all about solutions. And we mentioned IBC, infinitebanking.org. I highly recommend taking it out. I go through MC Lobster. There's a ton of other great people that are in there. There's also a couple of really good IBC practitioners that are inside the Replace Your Mortgage group, which I'm also a part of, for how to take your mortgage, replace your mortgage, being able to pay your house off a lot faster, and be able to actually use that as an asset rather than it being basically kind of a liability, or at least an asset that you can't really touch. So you might have equity in your house, but you can't realize until you sell it, right? Well, with Replace Your Mortgage, they teach you actually how you have constant access to it, to be able to actually improve your life, pay it down fast if that's what you want to do. That's kind of the first step that's there. And then the next step is all about, hey, where do you put that money when you have access to that capital and you've rearranged your life, paid off all your debts, all that stuff too. To me, I think it's a way better strategy than what Dave Ramsey says. Even though I certainly agree with a lot of Dave Ramsey's approach and why he's doing it, I don't necessarily agree with how we go about doing that. So with that, this is John Payne signing off for Cashflow Veteran for the first week here of November. I look forward to seeing you guys back here, and you're going to see a lot more of me consistently, in it for the long haul. And we got some other really good guests. Going to be bringing some other guests back for health and wellness and fitness, some of that stuff as well. And then have some other kind of unique ideas that are going to be popping up. And hopefully I'll be doing a lot more of this as well. And you'll be able to see some videos pop up on my YouTube channel of how-tos. How can you simply do some of this stuff, whether that's through YouTube videos, whether that's through the blog that I'm putting up as well, and kind of relaunching a lot of that stuff. So I'm really excited to get back to it, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this podcast so far. All right, take care. We'll see you next time. Take it easy, everybody.